Hello and welcome back to Just Another Football Podcast. Back again. No Ali this week, which is why you hear me in the presenting chair, and I'm joined as ever. Although I say as ever, I think we were just discussing this before we got started, George. It's been quite a while since yourself and I recorded one of these together, which, well, it's probably made for interesting listening experience for the viewers because we often tend to disagree. But you're back, I'm back, Fergal's here as well. Not to leave him out of the discussion here. How you boys getting on?
Yeah, well, very well.
Very
Just been
well.
watching the golf today.
Oh, very good.
From that, yeah.
Very good. I heavily approve of that, George.
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
just
I
trying to get back
like all
into
this agreement, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you?
I was watching rugby. I saw a little bit of golf. Like I glanced at it. It was on the pub as well. But the rugby and the Arsenal game were the main two things that I watched today.
Rugby's been going rather well, Fergal, from what I gather.
Yeah, we're just best in the world at the moment. We'll see how that goes. It doesn't
His
usually
chest puffing out as he says that. You know.
it doesn't usually go too well whenever we're the best going into a World Cup. But we'll see. We're on for the Grand Slam, St. Patrick's Day next week against England.
I think he might
steal the
beat
Grand
England,
Slam.
based on what I got to see of yesterday's game.
I
I think he
we're
might.
probably favourites for it. Yeah,
Just slightly. Not that I claim to be any sort of rugby expert, but
I was going to say, the good thing about this is I'm so disinterested in rugby that the bragging doesn't get to me. Like, I couldn't care less. In fact, I hope you win, because that is how little I care.
yeah, it's a nice position to be in, not giving a shit, basically. But good for you, Fergal. Glad to hear something is making you happy at the moment. Although Chelsea have had a good week on the quiet, so which brings me to my first important question of the day. Did you boys watch Match of the Day last night?
I did. It was bizarre. Did you watch it, George?
Yeah, part of it. I didn't watch it all.
I missed the start of it. Apparently, they didn't play the Match of the Day theme tune.
Really?
No, I didn't know
I
that
missed that
actually.
as well.
I didn't find out today.
There you go.
It was really bizarre. It was almost as if they didn't want it to be considered a match of the day. It was almost as if it was like, because the little title, I'm annoyed I didn't see the start of it, but the little title, the little cuts in between each match just came up Premier League highlights, and like I do wonder if that's like kind of what they wanted it to be referred to, as it was just the Premier League highlights. It's not necessarily Match of the Day. But what a mess the BBC have got themselves into. And,
it's quite impressive what they've done to sort of be able to empower and unite the entire country towards one point of view. It's it takes some doing, really. And actually, I don't think it's controversial to say Gary Lineker is someone that divides opinion at the best of times. So to have everyone kind of pulling in the same direction in their point of view over this is pretty impressive doing on their part.
Yeah, and the fact that I think they've kind of underestimated sort of the pundits and sort of forgotten that they're sports people and also they've already got their money made. A lot of them aren't reliant on the BBC. I'd imagine even some of them may be taking a pay cut in terms of what they could be getting elsewhere to be on the BBC, but doing it because it's the BBC, and maybe as a net holder probably better off for being on the BBC. But these guys aren't reliant on it, and especially Gary Lineker, who's if he was to leave, he would be snapped up straight away by one of the big.
There was a report that BT won him already. Like, it literally took less than a day to say that BT wanted him to present their coverage from next season. And they're the only ones.
And it's interesting that I've been sort of I've been just with all the football content I would watch. It's interesting to see that Mark Chapman, who was, I'm pretty sure, only BBC in the last couple of years, is now freelance. And he's probably one of the best sports presenters out there. He does The Athletic, he does the BBC, still Match of the Day too, and now he's doing Sky. which is like a great bit of business for Sky to get him in.
Yeah, the League Cup. Yeah, I didn't even realise that till sort of like the fourth round. He
Yeah.
was like doing the draw. So,
Yeah.
And he does what else does he do? He does Five Live as well.
Yeah.
But it's mad like the sort of camaraderie between like the pundits and then also the presenters that weren't professional footballers. Like they've really all gotten behind it. Colin Murray has he wasn't doing his BBC Five Live. I think there's a couple of radio shows.
One of them did. There wasn't BBC Five Live, Football Focus. What's the other one? The
Final Score.
Final Score. Yeah, there was no coverage over the weekend.
As far as I know, it's going to continue. We're recording this Sunday night. As far as I know, it's continuing on to tonight as well.
Yeah, so this weekend, which, yeah, I mean, as you said, I think they kind of underestimated I think the support kind of within the BBC and the guys that work these programs for Gary Lineker. I was about to say Gary Neville there. Gary Lineker, and match of the day as it is.
And it's funny. Like there was on the BBC News, there was the quote from earlier today. I can't remember the exact quote, but something to the sort of way of saying the BBC News have asked the BBC for an interview today.
Yeah.
So you've all this which is it's typical BBC internal politics. Like it's like there was a whole sitcom on the BBC called W1A, which was about the inner workings of how the BBC. It's a really good show, but its whole joke was basically just how ridiculous BBC is and how trying to be impartial about everything and being impartial about itself as well, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. But that was what they done today on BBC News. Was they tried to get an interview from somebody in the BBC. I didn't hear in the end if they were able to get somebody for that interview. But I'm sure it was tricky. And yeah, they're under massive threat, and they need to do the right thing, otherwise they'll lose a lot of the top pundits that they have.
It was interesting kind of as the day went on, obviously after the Lineker stuff got announced, and then Ian Wright was kind of quite quick to pull out, and then Alan Shearer, and it kind of became a case of the more that pull out, anyone that then takes this gig on, they become kind of vilified in the public forum. It just became more and more difficult for anyone to go, right, I'll take it, I'll present match of the day, and kind of take everything out of it.
Murphy was getting on Twitter just for saying nothing.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Jermaine Genius was getting it for a bit, and then Jermaine Genius sort of probably looked at his Twitter and was like, "Oh no, I need to come out and say something."
He was on air presenting. I don't know what it was, but it's sort of it's the running joke, isn't it? He must have the best agent in football because he gets all these presenting gigs. I think he was doing the World Cup draw last year.
The World Cup draw was mad.
Yeah, and you're sort of thinking he'll definitely be glad the opportunity because you sort of think he's vying for that role long term. But he felt the need to quickly kind of come out and shoot it down. Just they really have dropped an absolute clanger, and it's interesting kind of what you guys are saying there. I thought it's good to be able to watch football with good replays and a show that actually has all the goals in because. That's kind of what I was being led to believe by some politicians on Twitter that kind of had, obviously tuned in for the first time, probably. And, they were blown away by the experience. They clearly underestimate what the show is usually.
Yeah, the tweets that were showing all the goals as if they just cut out
you usually miss a couple out, and you sort of piece in the gaps and put it all together yourself. It's a guessing game at the best of times.
And I can't even remember the name of the TV channel, but they deservedly it's deserved that I've forgotten the name. Is it GB News? Is it?
Have you seen the sketch they did?
Match of the day,
my goodness.
Which was horrific, and ended up with them just being homophobic on it.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. Just it's like in trying to take the piss out of Match of the Day and sort of show how easy it is. They've made us look good, well, guys, we're doing a good job here,
in comparison to that,
they're getting paid to do that, and that's the best they could do. we do this. We do this like quite easily, and although we're not actually live, a lot of the time we're doing like a one take
One
here,
take.
guys. To let
Yeah,
you in behind the
and
curtain. There's not much editing that goes into
there's
our
not
show,
much
and it was
production that
definitely
goes
better
into
than
the.
that. We're
Listen,
not
people
dropping
might,
any homophobic clangers, that's for sure.
people might be surprised to hear there's not massive production that goes in. Not yet, guys. We're not
Not yet.
quite there yet with this podcast. You know, maybe one day. Yeah, I did see Matt Letizia was on there though. GB News. I think he would have jumped at the opportunity to sort of reignite his presenting career in football punditry. But yeah, I don't think he'll be expecting a call anytime soon, certainly. But yeah, just quite surreal, really.
It was funny seeing people that were bringing up Matt Letizia. It was funny seeing like some of the right wing politicians being like, and I think maybe Matt Letizia himself was saying like, you know, trying to draw a comparison between why he was.
Yeah, he conflated it with him, Phil Thompson, and Charlie Nicholas being let go by Sky Sports, and this is after he came out and tweeted a load of like anti-vax stuff. And I mean, it was pretty clear why what was done on Sky Sports was done. Whether you agree with it or not, to kind of compare it to what's happened here is, well, it's slightly missing the point, but
I
I'm particularly surprised.
Yeah, although Sky did probably let him go because of his politics, he was an awful pundit as well. Like he is,
Which, you know, I mean,
it felt like more of a. It was felt similar to the to Mark Lawrence and being let go by the BBC.
yeah,
like,
you know, it was
like you've had a good run at it.
Yeah.
It's probably time for a style change.
Yeah.
and that was
not even like what they're talking about or like, but it was like we need a few fresh ideas in here. That's what it felt like more than anything else. Like, but and whereas which is, but you know, he'll say something else and he'll probably say it was a big conspiracy and all the rest of it. So.
Yeah, well, he did say, you know, Ian Wright, if you're watching, I doubt he was, Matt, to be quite honest with you. I doubt he was. But moving on from that, should we talk about some actual football that went on this weekend? I think we've got to address the relegation battle, not simply because we barely talk about the teams at the bottom, not to kind of, you know, be snobbish or anything like that, but we're sort of looking at the top end of the table usually. This relegation battle is absolutely crazy. I mean, we're now in a situation where there's legitimately, I think, 9 teams you can make a case for being in this relegation battle, from Southampton in 20th all the way up to Crystal Palace, who are the only team in the Premier League not to win a game in 2023.
Yeah.
Some are still 12th. I mean, I'm amazed every time I check the table. Like, they're still 12th, and I'm not quite sure how. I don't really... and as I said, they haven't won a game in 23. I don't remember them winning many games, period, if I'm quite honest with you.
It's mental seeing where Bournemouth is and Crystal Palace is. I feel like like in my head, Bournemouth, although they're bad, it feels like maybe it's because the wins they've gotten are quite like.
They've got as many wins as Palace. They've got 6 wins. Palace have got 6. And there's a lot of teams with 6 wins, funny enough, which like might not be surprising since they're all kind of within 5 points of one another. So there's 5 points separating 20th in the table and 12th in the table. And it was funny because obviously Bournemouth played first, got the result against Liverpool, which we'll come on to in a second. They went from 20th temporarily up to 16th before kind of all the other teams had played a game. They're now 18th. They kind of, you know, found somewhere in the middle of where they'd started today, where they'd gone up to. It really is a case down there. Like if you put 2 or 3 wins together, you rise, you know, 5, 6 places in the table.
Yeah.
And I really think like when you look at these teams, the games they've got kind of coming up against one another. Because I was looking at Palace's fixtures, for example. They've had some quite tricky games in 2023. But they then end up playing a lot of these teams in and around them. And you're sort of looking at it and thinking, well, is that a good thing? Because, you know, on one hand, they're easier games, so you've got more chance of winning them. But on the other hand, if you lose, you're losing to your rivals who, let's face it, the only reason Palace aren't lower in the table is because their rivals haven't been picking up points either. Yeah. So if you're losing to them, that's kind of a, you know, direct competitor who then gain the points on you. It's crazy. It is absolutely... I mean, when you guys look at that relegation battle, is it easy to pick 3 teams you think will definitely go down? Because I think, honestly, you could make a case for any of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many. There were some of them I feel like I think there's some that I feel very confident they're going to stay up. it's three teams, so Wolves, Everton, and Leicester. I think
Mhm.
those three, I'm very confident will stay up. But Palace and Forest and West Ham, they're the teams that are currently outside of the relegation zone. I feel like they could be drawn in, especially Palace. They can't just seem to not be able to buy a win at the moment.
No.
No.
What about you, George?
Yeah, God, it's really tough, and we go back to like the predictions earlier on in like, the first week predictions.
I know you're going to say then, George.
But obviously, I think I put the three promoted teams in the relegation. I said it was pretty much surefire. Bournemouth at bottom. No, but Nottingham Forest bottom. Bournemouth, Fulham.
Yeah, you didn't rate Forest.
I still think both Bournemouth and Forest will go down, but it's not surefire. It's not guaranteed. I've seen recent reports that said David Moyes will keep his job if he gets relegated, which is mental, absolutely
Crazy.
mental, like
Absolutely crazy.
just off it. But yeah, any club could go down. I'm not too convinced that Leicester will stay up. To be honest.
It's interesting, Fergal, you mentioned them as one you think will definitely stay
Yeah.
up. I mean, I've watched a decent bit of Leicester because obviously they've played some of the better teams in the league recently, so you end up watching those games. I watched them against Chelsea on Saturday, watched them when we played them a couple of weeks ago. Like, I struggle to find anything positive in their performances recently. I think they've been atrocious, and they look like a team that's really short of confidence, doesn't know how to score goals. I think the only thing that kind of is, for me, redeeming about them is they've probably got the best player in James Maddison that plays for any of those teams kind of in that relegation battle. Might be enough if you're looking at that end of the table to have someone that produces moments and bits of quality. They do have him and maybe a couple of other players that kind of, do it here and there that could perhaps do enough for them. But, they're on the slide because I would have said sort of pre-World Cup they'd had a decent little run, and because they obviously had such a bad start to the season, they were rock bottom after 6 or 7 games. Then they went on a good little run and kind of found themselves, mid to upper half of the lower half of the table. But now they're right back in it. I mean, they're 16th in the league, and their form recently, they had a couple of wins, but the last 3 losses.
I thought against Chelsea, I thought they were actually a bit unlucky. I find it hard to, we'll come on to Chelsea later, but I find it hard to gauge like how Chelsea done at the weekend, because the Leicester missed 2 like great opportunities.
That's some good chances, and they can attack. It's well pressure. Yeah.
And then you look at their team, and I'm just looking and go, that is fairly solid, and they're bringing off Harvey Barnes off the bench, and these players maybe aren't having a good season, but if they can find form, there is loads there in terms of avoiding relegation.
I think with Leicester, there's goals in their team. You look at their record this season; they've scored 37 goals, which is the same as Newcastle, who are 5th. It's more than half the teams in the league.
Yeah.
So it's not scoring goals necessarily. It's been the fact that they're very poor defensively. Not just in terms of the goals they've conceded. Statistically, they've been one of the worst teams defensively in terms of expected goals against. I think their goalkeeper is probably the worst in the league. I think their centre-back pairing, although Souttar's been decent so far, don't look comfortable together from what I've seen so far. And then what happens, and I saw this when we played them a few weeks ago, is because they can't defend, they end up kind of going into their shell a bit. They don't attack. They sit very deep. They don't create anything as a result of that. And you don't end up playing to your strengths. So I think they'll be all right, but I think they're struggling. When I look at it at the moment, I think Southampton and Bournemouth are going to struggle. Although Bournemouth had a great win at the weekend, we should acknowledge that. Yeah. Particularly after what happened, obviously, at the end of last week. So they've had 2 good performances in a row against 2, nominally good teams. But again, defensively, they've conceded the most goals in the league. I don't back them to do what they did at the weekend on a consistent basis, to keep clean sheets, to stop other teams scoring against them. And I think Southampton have left themselves a little bit too much to do. I think Southampton will be disappointed they didn't win that game today. Playing against I think Southampton, I don't know if you guys saw any of the game today against Man United, they were playing well until Man United went down to 10 men. I actually think their performance got worse after that, albeit they had chances. I think their actual performance, it was kind of like they felt the pressure of needing to get something kind of more from that. because you know what an opportunity you've been presented with. Right, we get 60 minutes playing against 10 men, whereas kind of before that it was, you know, a bit not a free hit because they need results, but like you don't expect to get anything, particularly with Man United coming off the result last weekend. I think they'll be a bit disappointed.
Didn't the great Nathan Jones say against Wolves, you know, the worst thing that could happen to them is it's that red card. It struck them again, that awful 10 men. It's hard
and
to
Nathan
compete
was
against.
1-0 up in that game when that happened, though, so maybe slightly different in this case. But you know, maybe he was ahead of the curve when it comes to that one.
I've just brought up the Twitter account, the other 14, on their baseline tracker.
Nice. Yeah.
Which I can't. Do you remember how to succinctly explain what the other 14 Twitter account is?
Well, it's looking at the games between those 14 teams in essence. I don't know exactly what statistics they go into, but it doesn't involve. Yeah,
I couldn't
doesn't
quite
involve
remember.
the top
All I knew was
six.
it's quite good for tracking who's likely to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're looking at games between those teams, and that in essence is what we're looking at here. Like probably less the other 14 and kind of more the other 9, because you're looking at those 9 teams and what they do kind of against one another essentially.
I mean, included in this
is Newcastle.
It is Newcastle, and then Brentford and Brighton are the top 3. The bottom. I'll go from the bottom up. So bottom is West Ham.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Second bottom is Southampton. Third is Everton. And then Leeds, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, and Leicester.
The thing with Southampton and Everton is they have had that manager bounce, and they've got or at least there's certainly the manager bounce. I think Dyche is clearly adept at keeping that side up. So it'd be interesting to see sort of since those sackings what the upturn has been. I imagine it's completely flipped where Everton and Southampton are probably sort of way up there in terms of form anyway. But yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's just going to be a fantastic relegation battle. I think it's going to be one of the best that we've seen.
You wouldn't want to support one of those teams because it's so volatile. Like you literally could go from 13th or 14th to 19th within one weekend, quite conceivably at this point in time, which is crazy to think. Like, as I said, a couple of weekends ago, you think Leicester are out of it. Palace are 12th at the moment, yet we're talking about them being real contenders given their form and given the fact that they're only 3 points clear of 18th and don't look like they can buy a win for love nor money at this point in time. I mean, I can't remember the last season where you'd look at the team 12th in the table after 26 games and go, they are genuinely, odds on at this point in time to probably go down. I mean, that's probably a slight exaggeration, but given their form and the way they're playing, I don't think they're a surefire thing to stay up, which is absolutely crazy to say, really, this far into the season. It's going to be fascinating. Everton are an interesting one because Everton got a very good win this weekend. They were one of only 2 teams in the bottom half to win, along with obviously Bournemouth. I think Everton are the most... If they score first, I back them to hold out and get a win. They've done it 3 times now. Obviously did it against Arsenal. They beat Brentford, who hadn't lost in, I think, 14 games or something like that. And Leeds. They've had 3 1-0 wins at home. And that's the sort of win I can see them getting. But if they concede first, you never feel like they'll get back in it. Like they are... It's the range of outcomes really is that if they score first, I think they'll win. And if they concede first, I think they'll lose. Which might be enough because I think at home, they're if they score the first goal, they're quite difficult to come back against. But
they score in the first minute every week, they'll be all right.
Yeah, they'll be absolutely fine. It'll have no problem. I mean, listen, it didn't work for Bournemouth, mind you, but scoring early can help, and it certainly helped them this weekend. I think they'll do enough because I think at home they're good, but the other one, as I said, I think Southampton are struggling. I think Bournemouth are struggling. The other one, genuinely, it's a complete lottery. We haven't really spoken about Leeds. I think Leeds are struggling.
Yeah.
I don't think Leeds have really seen an upturn in their performances under Javi Gracia so far. I know they won the first game.
It completely passed me by that he was hired. Completely passed me by.
That's not a good thing necessarily to say, is it? Because you kind of want it to stand out a little bit short term. You think, okay, they've appointed this guy. Maybe a Nathan Jones standout, but this guy's coming, and you've seen a clear upturn in performances.
And the other thing about Javi Gracia is with his name, it's almost so like stereotypically Spanish that it almost feels like an assistant manager. Like it feels like he just could have been in the backroom staff.
Yeah.
Like it seems like one of these names that is just like if you'd have swapped Javi Gracia for the Southampton manager, I honestly would have been like, is this? But it's only because you're like, oh, the Watford guy, right? Sure, yeah, no, he is actually a proper manager. But I honestly, I could have easily been mistaken for just being an assistant manager.
It's not a good thing. I mean,
No,
when
that's not a good thing.
it's not a good thing. And I mean, in fairness to Leeds, that wasn't a bad result for them. Brighton are a good team, but draws aren't great. Like a lot of these teams are drawing a lot of games, and it's sort of like you'd rather win, lose, kind of be that binary. Because if you get yourself 10 wins over 38 games, you're looking better than winning a few and drawing loads. And it kind of feels like a lot of these teams they're not really going anywhere with draws. It kind of keeps you in it, whereas you can push yourself a few places up the table with a win. So tough times for Leeds. I wouldn't mind seeing them stay up, to be honest. I know you guys as Chelsea fans probably feel differently, but
well, my dad's a Leeds fan, so I have a soft spot for them, even though I really shouldn't. I did enjoy beating them the other week because they beat us
one of their only 5 wins they've had this season, the least in the Premier League. One win since bonfire night, which is pretty crazy, to be honest, that they're not dead and buried.
The thing with Leeds is like I feel like they do struggle. Although they've got 2 this weekend, I feel like they do struggle to score. Like I know that they've been crying out for like a striker to come in for a long time, and instead they've got like Weston McKennie and some of the other players that they weren't quite sure on. But so it just doesn't feel like the squad's come together, and then
No, I think they've got one of the worst squads in the league, Leeds, and I also hate them. So I cannot wait to see them.
There's very few players in that team that are like properly convincing.
No.
They're like solid. There's very few players who can go solid, good player. He'll do this for you. There's very few on that side, like yeah, I do worry for them, especially. Southampton. Coming on to Southampton.
Yeah.
Southampton, like they've gone so youth heavy that I feel like the championship might suit them quite nicely.
You can see them coming back up. Like you look at some of these
I don't think
teams
they'll
and
lose a lot. A lot of players dropping down. Maybe Ward Price might move on, but the majority of those players are young, going to be happy to get the minutes, and also haven't stood out too much that they would be able to demand a move. Apart from maybe Bazunu, but no, he hasn't had the best of seasons, but he had a good game.
did.
Today.
Good game
some
today.
really good saves. But as we were talking before, what is it? He's had a post-shot expected goals
minus 14, worst in the league.
It is poor. There's no doubt about it. But he is also probably he's the youngest goalkeeper in the Premier League as well.
Back-to-back clean sheets as well. Maybe it's on the up.
They are playing better, Southampton.
Okay.
Like it's just whether it's too little, too late.
Yeah.
But they beat Chelsea and got a draw away to Man United. I mean, they're good results.
The thing about them is that once they've got, it's just because they've got such a young side, and the majority of these players, once they have another 50 appearances under their belts, they're probably going to be a really good side to in the future, and they're going to be picked apart. Like Lavia is already Chelsea went in for him.
Yeah.
As soon as they got him, he does look really good. Bazunu, as I've talked about before, he's going to be class. And then you've got Bella Kocha, and there's other players I can't even think of right now. But they will be fine. And I don't think going down to the championship, although it is a risk, especially with how competitive the championship is and how much money is put into clubs. But out of all of them, I could see it actually suiting them.
They
And
could
like
deal with it a lot better than some.
Yeah.
giving these youngsters a chance to really express themselves in the championship and like play attacking football. Because at the moment, although they try and play attacking football and they are quite progressive, they have to be more pragmatic because they're one of the worst teams in the Premier League. But if you go down the championship, you'll be able to. These players will be able to express themselves more.
Yeah.
And probably play teams at their level, and then as a result improve. Southampton fans probably won't like me for saying that at all, but I think they'd be fine. And if you're thinking long term, I don't think it's awful.
Right. So before we move on, because we spent a decent chunk on this, 3 teams from both of you. Who's going down?
Do we have to put them in order as well, or?
Not necessarily, and if you want to.
I'd like to put Nottingham Forest bottom. Then I'm also going to put Leeds.
Oh, you didn't put Leeds bottom.
No, Leeds are in there. Leeds are second bottom. And then I just
Grin on his face. Great.
I just don't think Bournemouth have enough. So I'm gonna. Despite I quite like.
Interesting. Southampton making it.
I think
it out.
Southampton make it. I think the upturn. I think they've got.
Wow.
I can see. Do you know what? I think Jay Adams is the kind of player to score a goal on the final game of the season to keep them up and do an awesome celebration. Did you hear our comments on Reece Nelson's celebration last week, Harry?
I didn't.
Oh,
I sent a photo. I didn't get to listen to that. He was the coolest man in the house, though. That's all I will say.
Well, we tore him to shreds for one of
Well,
the worst
listen,
celebrations in history for one of the best moments.
I can forgive him. I can forgive him
I'm
for that. He's
sure
about
you
the only one he didn't lose his head, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But
I can see Shay Adams being the opposite, scoring an absolute screamer, final day of the season, keeping them up, going mental, flying into the crowd, probably assaulting someone. Yeah.
By accident.
By accident, yeah. Allegedly. No, yeah. So Forest, Leeds, and Bournemouth for me.
Fergal.
I don't think Southampton have enough, so I think they're gonna go down. I think Leeds will go down. And then I'm stuck between Forest and Crystal Palace. And even West Ham. It's going with West Ham. It's going back to that toxic place which we all love.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
That is the West Ham way.
It's fantastic. When I think of West Ham, you think of those I think it was their first season in the new ground, and they went out the Europa League to some random team I've never heard of, and it's the guy going absolutely mental outside the ground about. I think it's Astra Gogo. They went out the Champions League too. Anyway, ranting on fan cams. It's like sort of a watered down version of Arsenal Fan TV.
I was about to say, if only there was like a more high profile equivalent of Arsenal Fan TV. If West Ham had a version that was just as good as that, it would be incredible viewing.
Yeah.
Didn't they have like a massive pitch invasion and confronted players?
Yeah, they had people climbing up to like the posh seat. They had like
someone took the corner flag as well. I think.
Yeah, someone took the corner flag and done like a Souness and planted it in the middle of
that. Was it? I think it was against Burnley. To be fair, I think they lost against Burnley, which to be fair, you would be at the point of.
Listen, losing to Burnley would drive anyone to that. I can forgive it. With West Ham, because spoilers, I've got them in my bottom 3 simply for the reason that I think the Conference League is a really interesting thing to throw into this whole discussion because it could have one or two effects. It could be like a shot in the arm for them where they start winning games and it kind of breeds confidence.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's an added distraction. And actually, I think looking at it, it's a competition. I was looking at the teams earlier. They could go pretty far in it with a good draw, as bad as they've been in the league. So it might not be the best thing for them. It's just kind of an added thing to consider. I think they're struggling. I think Declan Rice is kind of already 1 foot out the door, and I don't think he's been I think he's been a disgrace at points this season, to be quite honest with you.
I've
in terms
always
of
said
his-
that.
I think he gave an interview last week after, I think, when they got absolutely battered by Brighton. Yeah, well, funny. But like he gave, but he gave an interview after the game. It took me a moment to sort of like clock onto that. But he gave an interview after the game, and he was it was along the lines of like people criticizing him. Well, like they would be playing the game if they knew what they were talking about, and it sort of wasn't what he was being asked. Like it was essentially that the interviewer was asking him about pundits talking about, so people have played the game essentially, and he kind of misconstrued that in terms of they would still be playing if they knew what they were talking about. And I just thought it's not the best thing to be doing, getting defensive about questions like that.
No.
Like just wear it and move on. You're the club captain. You've not played well. You've not played well all season, and you just have to take questions like that. And when you start getting stroppy and getting petulant, and people know you're leaving in the summer, it's not a good look. So I don't think he's doing a particularly good job of captaining them at this moment in time. And I think they're really struggling. Like, you think they've kind of made progress. They beat Forest 4-0. They go and lose 4-0 the following week to Brighton, who albeit are a decent side, but it's not an acceptable result.
West Ham to me are just like such like a Brexit club. Like they just don't work with fancy foreigners.
Scamacca and Paqueta.
You can bring in all these foreign players. It's not the West Ham way. They just don't work. You know, they'll go and be incredible. Like it'll be like Haller. You know, they'll go elsewhere and they will be incredible, but they just do not work because they're not Brexit. You know, even though that Paqueta is technically Brexit because you know that's the type of unique deal that they were looking for to get in from Brazil.
Yeah.
But it's not. He's too foreign. It's not going to work.
Fergal, yeah. Sorry. So your relegation teams.
All right. I think West Ham will just about stay up. I have a feeling they'll sack Moyes, and the manager bounce will be what keeps them up. But yeah, I'm gonna go Leeds, Southampton. I think Palace would sack Vieira before it gets too bad as well.
There's already like murmurings of it. This was before they lost, obviously, to Man City at the weekend. There was a report that he's under threat, and that usually doesn't end well when those reports start coming out.
So for the reason of that, you know, he's already been tested, and they actually gave him a new contract. Well, they might be giving him a new contract again. I think Nottingham Forest will go down, and again. He exceeded above all expectations.
Yeah.
This season's been a proper mess for them, and it's like QPR all over again. They've even got in the world class goalkeeper that everybody's going, how on earth have you got him? So, a la Julio Cesar.
Yeah.
So, I think that they'll go down, but I can't rule West Ham or Crystal Palace out. I think they're.
I think you can rule anyone out. The only one I don't think will go down is Wolves. I think Wolves will be okay.
Yeah.
I think of all of them, they probably should have got something out of the game today. I think they definitely should have had a penalty.
Yeah.
And I think they'll be fine, even though they don't score many goals. But them aside, honestly, anyone's guess. Not to duck the question, I think Southampton, Bournemouth, West Ham is what I'm saying. Even though I said Forest a few weeks ago, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt for now. Don't want to be boring and all have them down there. Moving on, so we'll venture up the table a little bit. I do want to save a little bit of time for Chelsea, but obviously Liverpool lost to Bournemouth. Ramifications of that is sort of one step forwards last week, two steps back again. Where does this leave, do you think, the top four race, given that Newcastle won today? Spurs eked out a victory, even though I think most people would say it's pretty toxic there at the moment, and we love to see it. If we're sort of looking at it as those three teams, Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool, I mean, I don't know if you want to dabble with the idea of Chelsea playing themselves into it, maybe Brighton, you know.
I'll give it another few weeks.
Do you know what?
After this weekend, I was there looking at like it's 11 points.
You start
You've actually got a game on in hand,
you know, and they lose that, and you start looking, you know, getting a bit.
But it's the other teams that like it's like Newcastle, but then Newcastle, they were doing bad before this. Yeah, I'm looking at it and I'm like the teams that you expect to be there, they're not as consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But then Liverpool, although they lost, I'd still expect them to like carry on their good form past this, like,
Which isn't convinced.
but Chelsea, if Chelsea's players played up to their actual ability and things clicked, which is a massive if,
Yeah.
huge if, it is possible. But I'm not saying that at the moment. It's still a long way off.
Are we saying it's
we'll
between
focus on the Champions League and win that, and that's how we'll qualify.
Yeah.
You know,
if we're saying it's between Spurs, Newcastle, Liverpool, and forget Brighton for a minute, albeit they're doing very well, but you know,
I don't know
Then-
if you can. You know, I think Brighton, whenever you've got a striker as good as Evan Ferguson up top for you, I think anything is possible.
yeah, but they dropped points to Leeds. We just spent the last half an hour talking about how bad they are. I mean, you know, any of those other teams, Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool, they'd be pretty disappointed with a 2-2 draw to Leeds. So
Yeah, to get it
if you're
down
judging them by
against
that
Leeds, but
standard.
Leeds got lucky. That goal, that Patrick Bamford goal was ridiculously
Yeah, it was-
lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, if we had to kind of rank it up percentage wise, right? What are we saying? Tottenham, Newcastle, Liverpool. What percentage would you give each team?
I think you throw United in there as well. Like, I'm not
Do
convinced
you
United.
think United nailed on?
No, absolutely not.
Because the thing is, you make a good point, right, George? A couple of weeks ago, they were 8 points behind Arsenal, and they were in the title race. They're 6 points ahead of Newcastle, and they've played a game more. So Newcastle win that, it's 3 points.
I'm just looking at it. They're only 2 points
They're
ahead
still
of
in the
Spurs.
Europa League as well. So this,
Look,
they've played a lot of games this
Yeah,
season, Man
yeah.
United.
Yep. Don't get me wrong. I still think they get it, but they're definitely not home and dry. And a team that loses 7-0 to, for me, a really underwhelming Liverpool.
Patchy Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've got to be asking questions on the back of that. And Tottenham don't look good. That's why obviously we'll move away from Chelsea, but that's why you feel hopeful, because they're all rubbish. They're all really bad. Like Newcastle. Newcastle aren't that good. Like, I love Newcastle. They're really pragmatic, but they're not that good. They're not top 4 good. They're in the position they're in simply because Tottenham, Man United, and Liverpool haven't been performing the way they should have been performing all season.
And
Chelsea. And Chelsea,
Yeah.
We'll ignore that.
We'll come to it, Fergal. Be patient.
I did predict, in terms of not Chelsea not performing, but in terms of the gap closing, I think I said it wouldn't go above 80 points. It's probably going to go above 80 points for Arsenal and City, but beyond that, it's going to be like it's pretty.
I think it's going to be mid-60s. I think you could see the lowest fourth. It's funny, I've sort of gone the other way, because earlier this season I thought it would be quite a high points tally. I think it could be the lowest points tally for a team that gets fourth in Premier League history.
Yeah.
When you look at it,
Where are all the points going? Because
who's taking
the
these
bottom
points?
half isn't going to break 40 points. Who's got all the points?
Yeah.
Where have they gone?
yeah, it'll go to those pesky teams in the middle of the table that no one cares about.
Is it
Aston
the middle
Villa.
table teams that are like
Brentford are
have
just
brought up
soaking.
the
Aston
average?
Villa are going to win every game for the rest of the season. Well, maybe not that good, because then actually they might be a half decent team. But yeah, those mediocre, not worth mentioning teams that never get any airtime on this podcast, they'll get a few wins and But yeah, I mean, I look at it and I cannot believe Spurs are fourth.
Yeah,
They've been appalling this season. I think even the most ardent Spurs fan will tell you that just the general mood. You've basically got a manager who doesn't want to be there. He's almost begging to be sacked after the game the other night. A club that doesn't want the manager there beyond this season. I don't even know why they're persisting with it, because they all know he's going to be gone. You've got their best player that wants out and has wanted out for the last couple of years. And their football is shit. Let's call it for what it is. It's appalling. It's not even effective. It's rubbish. I can't believe I've been this generous on them all season. They are absolutely awful. They went out of the Champions League to one of the worst Milan teams I've ever seen. I bet you want to play Milan in the next round.
Oh,
I bet you do.
absolutely.
As a Chelsea fan, you'd be looking at it thinking,
we
fancy
put them
Milan.
aside really
You
easily
slap
before.
them in the group stages,
Yeah.
like, and they went out over 2 legs against them, didn't score a goal, and they're fourth in the league.
I would have preferred Spurs in the next round, but Milan will do lovely.
I mean, this is the, yeah. I really struggle with it, and they might get fourth, and we might not win the league, and at the end of the season they'll be telling us, the results the same. We're both in the Champions League. That's something that's kind of bothering me in the back of my mind. I was quite glad to see Newcastle win today because I just don't want Spurs in the Champions League. I don't think their campaign warrants it. But I would say at this point in time they're favourites just because they got the points on the board, and on paper, having looked at it, Liverpool's next 3 games are Man City away, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home. Which, if you don't win any of those, well, you've played 29, you're 6 points behind, you're struggling. I think at that point to make top 4.
You're asking for a percentage of who.
Break it down for me. Do some mathematics.
I've done some mathematics. I googled 538, and they have these percentages for qualifying for the top 4 or for Champions League. So Man United, 74%.
It's quite high.
Which is really high considering the drop off for percentages. Tottenham is next on 33.
Yeah.
So it shows you like they're only 2 points ahead of Tottenham. They may have a game in hand on Spurs.
Yeah.
Game in hand. That's probably making the difference there.
I think it's also the fact that you wouldn't expect Man United to maybe go below 2 teams because they're third, whereas Spurs are fourth. So it only takes 1 team getting above them. But I agree. I think 74 is too high. After that today,
they've got a good team. Like they've probably got the best squad.
They played well, but I look at Man United and they've played a lot of games this season, and I don't think he rotates his squad very much.
No. Well, that's it. Their starting 11's good. Then you're looking at your bench, and you bring in on Scott McTominay, and he's like,
He had quite a good game today, actually, from what I saw. He was quite effective.
Scott. Anytime I see Scott, I go, he's a bit like Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He's just solid. Yeah.
So basically, they have Spurs fourth, right, in that model, marginally.
Yeah.
So Spurs in fourth and 33. Newcastle also on 33.
Yeah.
Joint fourth.
I think that's fair.
And Liverpool are on 30%. So there's basically 3 clubs that they're saying, they've a third of a chance of getting through. So they're basically saying between those 3 clubs that will one of them will get top 4, which is probably what everyone else is saying. Brighton, they've given 25% chance. So that's actually pretty good. And then you've got Brentford on 2% and Chelsea on 1%.
Cool.
Right.
They're saying Brentford are twice as likely to get Champions League.
Honestly, 100.
All I'm saying is you're saying there's a chance. You're giving us 1%.
You know what, Fergal? That's excellently and professionally done from you to sort of segue that into this Chelsea segment here. So quite a bit's happened, obviously, since last week's episode, where Chelsea had eked out a 1-0 win against Leeds, which obviously was necessary for Graham Potter to probably keep his job. Although he might get the Dortmund game as well, but he definitely needed a win there. And he's responded by winning the next 2 games. Good performance against Dortmund, I thought, although Dortmund, they're not very good. If we're being honest, sorry, boys. But I know they've won a lot of games.
Weren't they on an amazing winning streak before?
No, I'm just calling it what I see. I just didn't think they were very good. But Chelsea were good. Chelsea were good in the game, and they deserved to win across the two games, I thought. Although I don't think it was a penalty, but we won't open that can of worms.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a penalty, but I did think it was a retake.
I agree with that, because the rules are the rules, and it is what it is. But deserve to advance, and to be honest, knockout football, we've seen it suits Chelsea, albeit remains to be seen maybe this version of Chelsea. But a good win there, and then a good result. You kind of already touched on it, like a good result against Leicester. Bit end to end, I thought at times, particularly kind of at 1-1 and 2-1. I thought Chelsea were good until Daka puts one in, kind of out the blue, really, because I didn't think Leicester deserved that at all. But kind of from there, it was a little bit frenetic. But
I mean,
result.
From that point on, Leicester really dominated that first half, and then it was just right at the end after Havertz was injured. it kind of gave everybody a break, and then Chelsea came into it afterwards. Did you see this challenge from Amartey?
Yeah, very very lucky to stay on the pitch. I
I
thought.
was really surprised there wasn't more made of it because
Given the red card today as well for we should mention for Casemiro. When you sort of look back at that one, yes, I don't know if that one, given what was kind of written and shown on social media afterwards, whether that at all influenced then what happens today with that red card that then gets given, I'm not quite sure. But when you compare the two, the fact that that was only a yellow really super. I think that's a definite Stonewall red card.
Yeah.
there was because the sort of similar ones I remember before that are like they've won the ball but they followed through are like Aaron Cresswell, I think, got red carded for one where he followed through and he ended up being knee height. And at the time, I thought that was really unlucky because he was actually a lot closer to the player that he was challenging. He genuinely followed through and his foot just ended up being held up. Amartey, although we're talking like not a lot of time here, it's like you're talking about what happens in a second, but his foot is at chest height.
Yeah.
Like you after a kick, and it kind of lingers at that height for like only the smallest of seconds. I think he kind of knows what he's doing there. So he's trying to leave it on him. But anyway, he didn't get carded. In fairness, Chelsea had a penalty. Could have had a penalty against him for Fofana, defending a wall or defending in the wall. He stuck his elbow out. It could have been easily given. So we're probably even on those two decisions. But then, to carry on, so Chelsea or Leicester then were doing well. Chelsea came back at right at the end of the first half, put a wee bit of pressure on, and then Enzo to Kai Havertz, just like a lovely lobbed pass and a lovely little. Cool
I was
thing.
convinced it was offside, because of his reaction, and also because of the way the commentators, like they just made so little of it when he put it in. I was like, there'd already been one goal disallowed for offside. I was like, he must have the flag up over there. Like he thought he was offside. I thought Havertz kind of with his reaction and just the way he kind of nonchalantly lobbed it, kind of like you do sometimes, where you think you're offside, so you just shoot.
Yeah,
and then. It was just like so not, but it was a fantastic goal. I mean, really.
Do you know what my problem with the goal is though? It's not a striker's goal. It is the classic attacking midfielders, really nice. Oh, that's a lovely goal.
Does it a couple of times a season, looks great.
Exactly, but it's not a scrappy, he smashed it in from 6 yards. Oh, it's like it's pulled back to him and he scored. Like,
he wasn't taking the net
though,
is it?
Yeah,
it was barely touching the net.
It's beautiful, but it's an attacking midfielder's goal, and he's playing
it's so
up front.
Kai Havertz.
It's so Kai Havertz. It's like, why can't you score your one-on-ones? Why can't you score from 6 yards out when it's pulled back to you? Like, or crossed in, we just still lack that lethal force, and it's so annoying. Like it's so obvious, like painfully obvious, that we need Romelu Lukaku. But yeah, apart from that, it was a lovely goal, and I'm not too convinced we'll do very well on from here. We'll probably win a few games 1-0. We'll lose a game again.
It's interesting, right? Like it kind of brings up the question. Obviously, he's still in the Champions League, so that's an obvious objective.
Yeah.
But that aside, is there kind of anything related to performance or results or kind of what you want to see from Chelsea in the league between now and the end of the season to say, like, we're on the right track, I like what we're doing here?
Well, although we've got the result, we're back to where we were. We're playing a 3-4-3 again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're back to what we're doing. And I
Okay.
feel like we've seen the ceiling of this tactic. Unless Potter does his own thing. The only thing is Potter did change the tactics mid game. He changed the formation, and he seems to be big on that. So it may be a thing of going forward where like you kind of have to ignore what the tactic is written down or what the formation is written down, because going forward it will adapt. And Potter's kind of in press conferences try to, anytime somebody's told him like, oh, is this the formation? He's kind of gone, well, we're not really focused on that. It's not about that. It's a lot more fluid. So for that reason, I don't know. if it's a valid point for myself as to pointing that out that we feel, but it does feel like we're back where we were, and although we're getting the results, it does feel like if we're playing 3-4-3 the majority of the time, I feel like there is a ceiling on this,
Yeah.
which we've seen.
Sorry.
No, go on, you go.
The two things, the one thing I want out of this, and it has two different outcomes, is one, we either completely put to bed a no striker formation, or not a no striker, but a midfielder playing up front. And that can come of one of two ways. Either it's really successful and we score, an average of 2 or 3 goals a game from now on, or which the latter, which I predict, we don't score many goals for the rest of the season. It doesn't seem to be fruitful, and we put it to bed. And in the summer, we go out and get a striker, Leao, whatever it may be. Mitrovic would be a fine option for me if
On the way he's been playing recently.
Well, yeah, true. Anything, any kind of recognised striker. Put
Evan Ferguson.
Yeah, Evan Ferguson.
He's linked with Man United, actually.
Like, just...
I in all honesty, I wanted to stay at Brighton. I wouldn't even want him to come to Chelsea. Stay at Brighton.
No, that's a good point.
Do
but yeah, just either put it to bed, either by making me believe in it conclusively, or just it's gone, it's fucked. So move on.
It was funny against Leicester. Mudryk was actually being played down the middle.
Yeah.
Which him and Sterling, I'm really worried about. Sterling in the Champions League, I thought it was Werner. I had to get my glasses out because he was just constantly offside.
Yeah, he was.
All the time, and his finishing was awful.
But he was a threat though. He was at least.
But Werner was a threat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. Werner was a threat, and it was tight. It was always tight offsides. The only thing is he didn't quite. I feel like Sterling might have known he was more offside, whereas Werner would have been had the shirt off, running around the stadium thinking that he'd scored every time he was offside, even if he hadn't scored. But Mudryk, I'm worried. His first touch looks off. I've always been worried. I like the type of player that he is, but I don't know if he is the guy that we want out of that type of left winger. And the fact that he's been sort of shoehorned into the center just for his pure pace to pin the centre backs back.
Yeah.
As opposed to him being played on his natural position on the left. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm hoping he'll come good, but to steal from another podcast in James Alcott, at the moment I'm just no.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is worrying. And then Jai Felix, the Egyptian international didn't have a great game. Harry, you look confused there.
I've gathered this is something I haven't. I've missed the chapter.
But Jai Felix, he gave away the ball for the goal, for Leicester's first goal, and I almost like El Neni and and then he didn't have the best games when he subbed.
He didn't need to be offside for that goal he scored either. I felt it just unnecessary.
Yeah, that was the other thing I couldn't quite remember because I was making jokes about Egypt. But yes, that was the most frustrating thing as a guy that played up front for most of the Sunday League bits that I've done. That is your bread and butter. You
are one of those knobheads who sits in the pub after a few beers. I could have been something, if I just.
No, not at all. That's why I'm making the point, Harry. Because I'm bang average Sunday League. Struggle to get into most of the Sunday League.
You need a bit of time to run.
I'm playing it, but I time my runs well.
Yeah.
That is just unforgivable what he done.
There was no need for it whatsoever.
Um,
No need.
so get the basics right, and that's probably what it's another case as why we need a proper striker. And I am coming around to this way of thinking because, yeah, I'd agree with your point, George. We just need to suss it out. Where are we going to go gung ho on this no actual striker, or and it be like Man City in their pump, or are we going to go out and get one in the summer or bring back one from on loan?
Yeah.
Which I
Need
think is what
someone
you
that
really want.
you have to have someone that can play the role though. Like I actually think as sort of I've watched Arsenal do it at times this season. Obviously with Jesus who can kind of do a bit of both, but even recently we played Trossard there. And if you get someone that's good at it and knows how to play the role, it is good because you get kind of an extra man everywhere over the pitch in terms of the way they can link up with other players and kind of create overloads. But if you have someone like Mudryk that you've talked about, he's not comfortable there and he's literally just being shoehorned in to kind of like pin the defence back. But he's not in the game.
His first touch, like
You have to make it stick. It's the most important thing. You have to make it stick up there. Just have a good first touch and be able to bring other players into it is an absolute fundamental requirement of the role. Just put someone with a good first touch there.
that's why I kind of want João Felix to be the main striker because he's shown that he's got the finishing ability. Like the goal that Enzo Fernandez set up for him, he took that well. He's got the first touch, he's got the dribbling, and he's also decent in the air. Like if you go back and look at some of his goals for Benfica, I feel like he's the most striker instincts out of all the likely starters for Chelsea. So, but he seems to be put out in the left, maybe because he prefers it. But I feel like just swap Mudryk / Sterling because they swap roles, or they came in for one another at the weekend, and put João Felix down the middle for the meantime, and ask him to do a striker's role.
Yeah, seems the obvious solution.
Right, just to finish off, Kai Havertz has been fantastic the last 2 games.
I know, well,
I think he's been great.
He's gonna get another season. I'm telling you, man, he's gonna play himself into your team next season.
Against Dortmund, he was so good, and if we have more of that on top of his finishing, even if it isn't emphatic, if he keeps thinking his goals, I'll take that.
I don't mind the theory of Kai Havertz, but in practice,
that's such a good way of putting it.
It just doesn't.
It's such a good way of putting it.
I love the theory of Kai Havertz. I think he's he could be everything, but he's
is
not.
he like is he Fugazi? Is Fugazi? It's Kai Havertz.
Yeah.
That's a very eloquent and accurate way of putting it. I think he flatters to deceive a lot, but you're right. He's been good in the last 2 games, and I hope you stick with him because it doesn't exactly worry me when he's on the opposition team sheet. I'm sure I definitely won't regret that when we play Chelsea in like 6 weeks or whatever it is. Right. One last thing, order of business before we finish for the evening. Short King of the Week. Do you need a bit of time to consider this? I do have one to throw into the ring.
You hit us with one there.
Not biased at all, but Leandro Trossard, hat-trick. Not first hat-trick of the season because he got one at Anfield. Hat-trick of assists against Fulham today. Very good performance, as I've sort of already touched on. I mean, if you can trump that, then, fair play, fellas, to be fair. But, love him. Been a great signing, actually. Funny because you sort of mentioned Mudryk, obviously. Mm-hmm. We were in for him, didn't end up getting him, but I would argue at this point in time, it's clear who is more effective right now. And that's not to say Mudryk wouldn't have been a good signing for us. I think it would have been a slightly different role for him at Arsenal, kind of compared to Chelsea, albeit he's been on the bench a bit recently. But I think had he come to Arsenal, it would have been kind of in more of an impact / kind of slotting in rotation role. At Chelsea, there's been more of an impetus for him to obviously come in and make an immediate impact. But Trossard's been a great signing for us, and he's my nomination for Short King of the Week.
I've got nothing to
You know what? Whenever you said Trossard, when I was watching the game earlier, I was like, he's probably going to be short king of the week. Whenever was watching it earlier,
Yeah.
And I haven't really got anybody else. So yeah, Leandro Trossard. I
feel like
think
he's had it already this season. He might have got it when he got the hat trick at Liverpool. I do feel like he's had it this season already. But
yeah. What height is Chilwell? I feel like it's Chilwell's. Yeah, he could just be in with it. Maybe not this week, but I think Chilwell might be due one at some point.
yeah, he'll probably be injured soon though. Like he.
Cucurella for his midweek performance.
Yeah, that was he did play well. He's coming for some stick this season, from me included. But did a good job.
But yeah, I'm happy for Trossard.
Yeah.
I
think you struggled to beat it, lads. I'll be honest with you.
I hope he gets a good night's rest because he always has those bags under his eyes. I hope he.
One of those great mysteries. That, in fairness, I don't know if he's just got an uncomfortable mattress or what. Like what? I mean, to be quite honest, you're right. He doesn't get I mean, imagine how good he'd be if he actually was sleeping well. I mean, Jesus Christ, be some player. Boys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me as ever. I hope you're not as happy by the next time we record one of these because I've been quite enjoying the sort of Schadenfreude side of it because you boys have been able to do it to me for kind of long enough before this season. So yeah, not to wish too much harm on Chelsea, but yeah, I've enjoyed their struggles this season, and long may they return, for want of a better phrase. But it's been a pleasure. Hope you guys enjoy listening to this. Ali will be back next week, probably back presenting. Me and George might be on the same podcast again together. We no promises made, but
will lightning strike twice?
Listen, it's been a while, and we still haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which is George's predictions for Chelsea this season. Back, I think the last time we recorded together. So we'll let you off for that for another week, George. Thank you very much, guys.